Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Future of Flight Coffee Chat. I'm Amanda Brewer, Head of Marketing at OneSky, and your host for today's event. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items to go through. If you run into any technical issues with the Livestorm platform during today's event, click on the Help button at the bottom left hand of your screen for assistance with audio and connectivity issues. On the bottom right hand of your screen, you will find the chat panel that will let you chat with the room and the panelists. The questions panel is where you can submit questions that we will answer at the end of today's session. The apps panel is where you can download handouts for more information on what we talk about today. Now I'm pleased to introduce to you today's guests from MissionGO. We have with us today Chris Corgnati, the president of MissionGO. Chris is a retired Navy captain and business executive with extensive experience in both the federal and private sectors in executive leadership, strategic planning, and operational execution and unmanned aircraft systems. As president of MissionGO, he appreciates the collaborative, mission-based approach, leveraging cutting-edge technology for initiatives that matter. Under his leadership, Chris seeks to establish MissionGO as the premier UAS provider in the country. We also have Ryan Henderson, Director of Flight Operations at MissionGO. Ryan's responsibilities include overseeing all flight operations, managing pilot and crew currency and qualifications, directing all operation readiness reviews, curriculum creation and facilitation, and maintaining all UAS records. He is an airspace analysis expert that has been called upon multiple times for certificates of waiver or authorization and Part 107 waivers. He is at the forefront of gaining FAA certification for unmanned vehicles flying beyond visual line of sight at night and overpopulated areas. He was part of the team that created the first FAA certificate of authorization for flying transplant organs in an urban environment. And finally, we have Mike Tornetta, head of sales at OneSky. Mike has over 20 years of experience in business development, sales, and sales management within software and technology-based companies, particularly in the aerospace and aviation industries at companies like Lockheed Martin and ANSYS government initiatives, formerly Analytical Graphics. At OneSky, Mike supports leading aircraft manufacturers and operators for urban air mobility and advanced air mobility to prepare their systems for BVLOS operations. So, Mike, before I hand it over to you, can you tell us a little bit more about the OneSky Future of Flight program and why it was created?
Yeah, sure, Amanda. Thank you. As a UTM company, we're faced with some interesting challenges. As everyone knows, the regulatory community around the globe is operating at various speeds and still maturing as we speak today. The value of a UTM is growing, but it won't reach its full potential until operators and infrastructure providers have a clear path to scaling their businesses. We wanted to create a low-risk way to bring together operators, OEMs, and other technology partners so that they can get an early jump on preparation for when the day does come, that they can scale and put their business models into full-time action. Because of our early and continued successes in the UTM market as it stands right now, it's sometimes easy to forget that OneSky has other values to bring to the table besides just a UTM platform. The Future of Flight program serves as an on-ramp, if you will, for operators and platform manufacturers to gain access to the full range of operational solutions and services that we can provide before UTM is even a necessity. So we're using our aerospace engineering experience combined with our technology offerings to help with everything from ConOps development, systems testing, flight operations, community acceptance, and even certifications and waivers and more. The Future of Flight program actually helps early adopters get an advanced look at how their systems will react or work inside of a UTM system. And then by doing that now early on, we're trying to help them reduce risk and time to market challenges. So MissionGO was one of the first operational partners to see the benefit of joining this little program. I'm thrilled today to have Chris and Ryan joining us, and I'm excited to present them with an opportunity to talk a little bit about MissionGO and the things that they do and their vision and approach to the industry. So specifically, beyond visual line of sight operations are what we're interested in talking about today, and the various different types of mission sets and challenges that come along with them. So MissionGO has performed over 50 medical and critical cargo flights transporting highly sensitive payloads. We think they're a pretty good source of information when it comes to how to tackle these challenges. So to me, this is one of the best use cases to show the value of drone operations. So why don't we get started? Chris, for those that may not know about MissionGO or what you do, can you tell us a little bit about your work and your approach to the industry?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. And I'll sort of start at a high level and give you a little bit of the background, the origin story of the company and what our current focus area is. And then I'll turn it over to Ryan, who's the guy who actually flew a lot of these historic flights and is out there making things happen on a daily basis for the company. So he can get into much more than I can on the technical side and at BVLOS and what we're thinking on the technology side and how, OneSky plays into our vision for making it happen. But our origin story goes back to 2019, where Dr. Joe Scalia, is a world-renowned transplant surgeon, got the idea that we should be transporting organs with drones instead of helicopters and cars and couriers and all the other ways that we move organs about to get them in the hands of people like him to save lives. So he partnered with then University of Maryland test site, Ryan and Tony Pucciarello, who was down there at the time. And they flew a kidney into Maryland, University of Maryland Medical Center, that was transplanted into a human being for the first time. And so out of that grew MissionGO. Various fashions of MissionGO have since been broken out into three, so we call them sister companies. You've got Alaris Pro, which is a maintenance and reliability software package for fleet management. And then you've got MetaGo, which specifically targets the organ transportation logistics side of the equation. And then you've got MissionGO as the operational arm in the middle that sort of completes the puzzle. So out of MissionGO, now we took that critical medical cargo, which we still routinely do. We're actually getting ready to go down to Texas in a week or so to conduct an operation we're really excited about. Ryan may touch on that later. We're also focused heavily on infrastructure inspections. We recently awarded a 3-year, $50 million contract to do work in California on electrical grid power inspections to prevent wildfires and also maintain the grid to reduce downtime. And then training is our third pillar, which we really do to support the other two. But we also do a lot of first responder training in addition to training our own crews. So that's sort of the broad umbrella of what we do. And we're looking to take these technologies, which we know have great potential, and figure out how to do good in the world and in society, and at the same time run a business. So you find those intersections of things where you can make money and make a difference, and that's where we want to be operating. So I'll stop there. Let Ryan fill in some of the things that I missed about the origin of the company.
Thanks, Chris. You did a great job there. So MissionGO has been, laser focused on taking uncrewed technology and innovations to the next level. Once upon a time in the not too distant past, we were putting 4 rotors on an X-frame little quadcopter and some fairly rudimentary autopilots. And the challenge was, can we get this thing to take off and still fly and maintain itself in one piece, and then maybe even land it and fly it again? Well, we're, needless to say, well past that. And we're now to the point where we get to enjoy the flying part and we get to enjoy the innovations that come with that. But then the next step is, of course, let's take it another step further and fly these things far away. And let's carry packages from point A to point B to point C. And at one point in time, again, the focus was on the innovation. And now that the innovation has matured itself to a certain point, regulators, the industry, both in medical, commercial, even DoD, is now looking at all of us and saying, okay, so you have this great aircraft that can carry, pick your widget, but we needed to fly a little further than just visual line of sight. In fact, not only would we like to fly it further than visual line of sight, we would like to fly it in some fairly compact and complex population-rich areas. How are you going to address that? From an operator's point of view, the hard part for us was number one, the innovation of getting the aircraft to operate properly, fly well, be reliable, so that it's airworthy and is not going to fall out of the sky. But then the next difficult part is, okay, we're not in that aircraft. We don't have the ability to see and avoid some of the luxuries that we have in full-size aircraft. Onboard radar systems are still a little bit in infantile stages, so we can't necessarily rely on that. So what do? And that's where, companies such as OneSky and the whole idea of UTM is going to be, in our opinion, the next key and ability to unlock what the industry is needing right now. And big help to operators such as MissionGO to be able to work with companies such as OneSky to make that happen.
Hey, Mike, you're on mute.
Sorry, I just realized that. One of the first things that we want to do with our Future Flight members is create a digital concept of operations. So we wanted to work with you, and we did work with you early on to build a video of what a typical type of ConOps might look like for you. We believe that modeling and simulation is a great launch point for clients and partners to start deriving value from the platform and the other solutions. Can you tell us a little bit about the value that you were able to gain from going through that process with us?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. So, before we start any operation or any flight, we're solving probably 70% or more of the operational safety risk by pre-planning. In the old days, it was, walk out there, look at the sky, check out how things look, verify elevation models and terrain. But now, as I mentioned earlier, as innovation has grown with our aircraft, that we can send this aircraft, legitimate miles, and to be able to scale our operations, we need a way to pre-plan, test, model, and simulate these missions in a variety of environments and conditions to have a very high degree of confidence that the operation is going to be safe and successful. And so, I see we're playing the video here, and what you're seeing is a planned operation over the city of Baltimore using the MGV 100. And I believe inside of this simulated cargo, it looks like we've got one of our organ cargo boxes under there. So the idea and concept here is to plan not just a simple route, but then to understand how this mission plays a role with several other simultaneous operations happening, not just with uncrewed systems, but the entire airspace as a whole. What is the big picture here? What are the risks involved? Maybe not just from, say, an in-air collision with manned aircraft or another uncrewed aircraft, but what about risks involved with spectrum, risks involved with the surrounding airspace? Our headquarters is located right in Baltimore, which is just on the outskirts of the Bravo for BWI. So a simulation and model like this really brings in that risk element, the risk modeling, so that we can have a complete picture, and then allows us to scale the operations so that they can continue to be efficient and safe and reliable as we continue to grow the industry. Michael did a great job, by the way. OneSky has been really instrumental in helping us to visualize what these large-scale operations look like. So looking forward to all the next steps and moving forward.
Yeah,
and Mike, I just on a little bit there, and I think Ryan alluded to it. From my experience in aviation in the Navy, 75-80% of your success on a given mission was based on your pre-flight preparation, right? It was the route study, it was the target study, it was all the things that you expected to encounter during that flight you wanted to have thought through and planned for and knew how to react to. So in this case, being able to lay it out, with population density maps, with RF coverage maps, with obstacle avoidance maps, with known air routes and other air traffic, and like you said, the Class Bravo airspace from BWI, and all of those different things, you can lay it out. And we designed that network in and around the Baltimore Harbor to run logistics. And we had thought it through, but to be able to see it, in 3 dimensions and watching different things move and how they interact, not only great for us in our preparation and how we think through the ConOps, but then as we go to engage community members or potential partners in and around the project, well, what a great place to explain to somebody what you're talking about by hitting that video, and it becomes real and obvious to folks what you're talking about and how you expect to go about and do it. So very important.
Yeah, we're trying as a company and as a team to bring as much of the analytics that we do in those early ConOps exercises into the UTM and our real-time situational awareness stuff as well. So we like working with folks like yourselves who have the real boots on the ground problems to tell us what you need and make sure that it gets into there. So obviously, as we're migrating towards BVLOS, right, we're getting outside of 107 and more towards beyond visual line of sight. I'm curious if you could share with us a little bit about MissionGO's strategy. How do you plan on getting to more and more BVLOS flights as the regulatory community catches up? Obviously, today you're using waivers and you're working on type cert, but beyond that, what's your objective there?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that and hand it off to Ryan. So I think you mentioned a couple of things that we are doing. Obviously, within the current system, you're working waivers and other things to be able to go out and improve the concept, because we know the technology is there. We know we can physically go out and do these things, but to be able to do it in a safe, integrated manner, still requires those. And then you talk about the certification. The MGB 100 is what we believe to be the 11th aircraft to have its airworthiness criteria published in the Federal Registry. That happened about 2 months ago. And it's the first single rotor helicopter to come through that pipeline to date. So we're excited about that, continue to work on that project, because we think that will unleash or unlock some airspace for us as you go forward. When you go to look for those waivers or potential exceptions, either beyond visual line of sight or over people, we think that certification is going to be an important factor. And then the one thing we are attacking right now, when you start going beyond visual line of sight, what are the 2 things you worry about? Being able to communicate with the aircraft and being able to detect and avoid. We've already attacked the communication side, and we've got an LTE solution that Ryan can talk about, which has been performing amazingly well, stable, high bandwidth. It's really solid. And then in detect and avoid, there are people working on it. Again, if you want to go active radar, you still have size, weight, and power considerations. I haven't seen anything. I mean, they're getting better. They're getting smaller. I don't think they're quite there. There's some optical systems that people are flying with that I think have some potential. But again, we're not developing that technology in and of ourselves. We're going to let the industry and the regulators tell us what the right answer is, and then integrate and use it. Ryan, you got anything to add there?
Yeah, I think you pretty well covered it, Chris. I think from the very beginning, and since we're very much in the infantile stages of BVLOS and detect and avoid, it's really, really important, and certainly for companies like us, to stay nimble and to understand all of the different strategies that are being deployed in the marketplace. We've seen and tested all different makes and models, from acoustic to optical and radar, and of course the ADS-B, which is tried and true on full-size aircraft for many, many years. But what is the real answer to that? We think that it's going to be a layered approach, but at some point in time, you're going to have to fuse this data together and then have a way to make sense of all this data, essentially producing a knowledge that can be digested in real time. And that's where our UTM providers are really shining here and coming into play. And so definitely layered approach, data fusion, I think that's really, really important. Now, what particular streams of data in the end, I don't think anybody really knows what that answer is at this point, but I think we can all agree that it's not going to be any one source. And when we start talking about multiple sources, again, that's where the UTMs are really going to be necessary to make sense of all this. And then as we start to gather all these additional data sources and we start to scale, and it's not just MissionGO, but there's several other companies out there that are all doing this as a group, as an industry. As we scale, UTM is going to become just incredibly important in order to make this work, and as well as for the regulators to accept whatever the standard is that we're creating in order to continue to move forward. So incredibly important as we go. Thanks,
Amanda.
Mike.
Do we have time for one more question before we get into Q&A?
Yes, we have time for one more question, and then we'll head into Q&A. So if you have the audience, if you have your questions ready, please start submitting them, and then we'll start to answer those after this question.
Okay. So you just alluded to one of the other things I wanted to ask you, Ryan, which was the cargo delivery space is going to get pretty crowded if it's not already, in your opinion. What is it about MissionGO and the way you approach the market that separates you from everybody else?
Well, I would say one of the things that we do right now is that all of our operations are a no defect, high precision type operation. While we're focused on the critical medical, critical cargo, and we also feel that our aircraft, which you see there above my shoulder, it's a single rotor helicopter, is particularly unique in the way that it handles weight, its efficiency, and its ability, of course, to take off and land vertically. So we don't need runways and large fields and that kind of thing. And it's just particularly suited for what we're doing, kind of that last mile delivery in particularly can be difficult environments, being an urban environment. And I see that Don has asked a question, and I don't want to jump ahead and mess up Amanda's schedule here. But to your point, our helicopter and our operational strategy is very well suited for urban and highly densely populated areas. Flying in a city is difficult. It is not the same as in rural areas, deserts, overwater, farm fields. Rather, being in that highly densely populated area with the buildings does present a plethora of unique factors, to include wind, to include unique turbulence and variable gusts. And so our operations, the planning provides for that, and the aircraft itself is well suited to handle those kind of environmental conditions. Hope that answered the question you were looking for.
Yeah, that was going to be the first one I pulled out. I did see that Don had asked a question. Amanda's dealing with, I think, a technical issue on her side. I'll read the next question for you guys. It's from Craig Corbello. What are the weights and distances of the MissionGO drone behind Ryan's shoulder? Sorry if this might have been touched on earlier. Yeah, I don't think you touched on that to any great degree, right?
Sure. No. I'd be happy to talk about that. So, of course, what you're seeing in that picture there is that was actually one of our earlier tests on our helicopter. And the payload box you're seeing there has got close to 14 pounds of weight inside. And there's some special things about that payload box that, even though it looks different than the one you'll see in our more current pictures, it's still on the inside is the same, because we haven't figured out how to make it better. Not to say that it's the best thing out there. We're always innovating, but there's some damper systems in there that actually isolate all the vibrations from the aircraft, which is minimal and minor, I would say. But when we're carrying somebody's kidney or a pancreas, the last thing that person probably wants is their pancreas to come out the other end like a smoothie. So what we've done is we have done a lot of vibration analysis. So that box is pretty unique. Now, as far as distances go, again, that really is going to depend on the conditions and what we're carrying. This aircraft can take payloads as far as 30 miles or potentially further if we were to get the appropriate waivers to go beyond the 55-pound limit for Part 107. But let's right now, we're going to talk about within the framework of 107. We're carrying payloads up to 30 miles, flying for up to an hour worth of time. If winds are extreme, and I'll say extreme, let's say north of 30 knots of wind, then it's going to fly a little bit less than that if you're flying into a headwind. I mean, that's the physics that apply to all aircraft, right? But it's well suited for doing that. I hope that answers your question there. Okay, looks like we've got Craig. We'll see you in Lubbock next week. Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
All right, last call. Any other questions for Brian, Chris? Oh, looks like Don.
So it's interesting that Don's putting that up there. So one of the things that we are doing too in our systems is we have an open API for different data feeds, such as weather, like True Weather. And we are experimenting right now with True Weather's data feed. So we're trying to bring as much of that type of data as we can into our system to make it even easier to do some of the things you talked about earlier, Ryan. To that flight.
I mean, that's going to be important, especially in an urban environment. You got microclimates and different conditions just based on the structures that you're flying around and the environment. So having real-time data, and people talk about flying into New York City and landing on top of buildings, and the challenges with doing that are significant. And I think we're a long way from being able to do that. We're looking at opportunities to fly within a city through a logistics network, whether you call it middle mile, last mile, sort of hub to hub, and then to actually get out in an urban environment. That the weather is going to be hugely important because the winds can be drastically different.
Amanda, I see another question from Audrey. It says, does your 4G solution use any QoS mechanisms?
Okay, I can take that one. We'd be happy to take that. Are we allowed to name drop on this chat? Because I'm going to.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the LTE solution that we're currently using is called the Halo by a company out of Israel called Elsight. And I want to brag on those guys a little bit. First of all, not only is their team just absolutely tremendous, their support is second to none, but the unit itself is just absolutely blowing everything out of the water that I've tested yet. As far as LTE solutions, it's extremely robust. It has not missed a beat, and the quality of service is second to none. It utilizes redundant cellular-based modems that not only just pick best signal strength and that kind of thing, but actually bond multiple different data streams together simultaneously. So if one were to fail, the rest just keep going, which is a good fit for our platform because most of our platform is also built that way on the aircraft when it comes to redundancy and failure. So when we met with the Elsight guys and they kind of explained how their system worked, it was a natural fit for the type design of our helicopter. So we're super happy with those guys. So if you haven't checked them out, I would encourage you to do so. It's a very high performing system and we love it.
And I messed up the name too. I said Audrey. Sorry about that. I meant Andrew.
Yeah.
Amanda,
and
go
tell
ahead.
you what, I don't want to go off script here, but I did notice the very beginning, Don, there's another kind of part to his question. His question was looking at the operation in urban environment. How are the winds at altitude near buildings impacting and reliability and predictability? We talked about that, but I would like to just share a little bit of our experience of flying in big cities, downtown area. And absolutely, it does affect the aircraft. And as Chris mentioned with the microclimates and, Don, you did mention the True Weather guys who are great also. That's a big deal. that's a big deal. And another reason why, we chose the single rotor helicopter is to handle those particular winds. We did extensive testing when I was with the University of Maryland prior to sending the kidney that was for transplant over the city of Baltimore. And part of the testing that we did was actually sending aircraft up in a hover for prolonged periods of time over several different days off of the University of Maryland Medical Center to understand what those winds were like and what they were doing. And it is quite chaotic. It is in nature. Take whatever wind forecast you have, and they say you have a northeast wind gusting at 15, 20, and you can almost throw that out the window when you're flying in a city in those kind of environments. So it is very, very important. Those microclimate predictions and forecasts and real-time data feeds are going to become ever more increasingly important, and certainly to fuse in with our UTM providers so that operators such as MissionGO can understand exactly what's going on in real time, or at least near real time would be helpful, so that we can plan, predict, and mitigate the risks that are involved with that. That's a great question.
Thank you,
Right,
Ryan.
that's great. Thanks, Ryan. That looks like that's all the time we have for today. I would really like to thank Chris and Ryan for being here today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to talk to us and the audience today about what you guys are doing at MissionGO. It's really great to hear the wonderful things that you guys have been doing. And thank you so much for being Future of Flight program members. It's really great to work with wonderful partners like you guys. And thanks, Mike, for being here as well. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today. You'll be able to see the recording of this if you'd like to watch it again, and keep an eye out for our next Future of Flight coffee chat. It will be coming to you soon with our next wonderful member. So thank you all, and we'll see you soon. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.